Abuja may be Nigeria's capital, but it is not insulated from the country's security crisis. Kidnappings on the city outskirts, vandalism of critical infrastructure, illegal mining, attacks on schools and communities, and the growing sophistication of criminal networks continue to test the nation's security architecture. While the police often take center stage, another agency quietly carries the enormous responsibility of protecting lives, critical national assets, and public confidence: the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps. In the Federal Capital Territory, the Corps is expected to help secure communities, protect elections, combat vandalism, respond to disasters, and work seamlessly with other security agencies in a city under increasing pressure. Is Abuja truly as secure as officials claim? Is intelligence translating into prevention? Are security agencies doing enough to stay ahead of criminals rather than merely reacting after attacks? And what more should residents expect from an agency that sits at the heart of Nigeria's internal security framework? Tonight, we sit down with the FCT Commandant of the NSCDC, Olusola Odumosu. This is Dateline Abuja. Hello and welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Kayla Megwa. Let's begin with the major stories this week from Nigeria's presidency. Here's our Abuja wrap.
Vice President Kashim Shettima has met with President Bola Tinubu at the presidential villa in Abuja to express his appreciation for being retained as the All Progressive Congress presidential running mate for the 2027 election. The closed-door meeting took place at the president's office shortly after the APC formally unveiled the Tinubu-Shettima joint ticket following a stakeholders meeting. Senator Shettima's visit comes after months of intense speculation about who would emerge as President Tinubu's running mate for the 2027 polls. The APC's decision to retain the Tinubu-Shettima ticket underscores the APC's confidence in the same leadership pair that secured victory in the 2023 presidential election. Vice President Kashim Shettima, former head of state General Yakubu Gowon, state governors, family members, and associates are among dignitaries who attended the one-year remembrance of late former President Muhammadu Buhari in Abuja. Speaking on behalf of President Bola Tinubu, the Vice President praised the former president's commitment to nation building and for his virtues of integrity, selflessness, and simplicity.
He gave everything he had to this country, and he gave it without reservation. He served with courage. He served with conviction, and with a patriotism that never asked what the nation could return to him.
The Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu, Femi Gbajabiamila, has urged Nigerian youths to embrace responsibility, uphold unity, and place national interest above personal ambition. Speaking at the 2026 National Retreat of the City Boy Movement, themed Youth, Unity and Action, the Chief of Staff said the country's future would not emerge by chance, but through deliberate efforts by young Nigerians.
We all acknowledge that these reforms are very difficult. There will be consequences because there are bitter pills to swallow, but that they are necessary.
The Niger Delta Development Commission has launched a $500 million Agric Development and Investment Fund to finance agricultural activities in the Niger Delta region. Vice President Kashim Shettima performed the launch at the maiden Niger Delta Agricultural Development and Investment Summit, which held at the banquet hall of the State House in Abuja. He says the administration of President Bola Tinubu remains committed to ensuring food security in the country.
His July 2023 declaration of a state of emergency shifted our national approach from the boardroom to the ground, across production, market stabilization, and food access. This is why mechanization has been the centerpiece of the drive.
Welcome back. Abuja has become one of the fastest growing cities in Africa, with billions of naira invested in roads, bridges, railings, streetlights, and other public infrastructure. Yet, vandals, kidnappers, illegal miners, scavengers, and organized criminal networks continue to exploit security gaps. Is the NSCDC staying ahead of these threats or merely responding after the damage has been done? We continue our security updates in the FCT, and this week we have the Commandant of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps FCT Command, Olushola Odumosu. Tashola Odumosu, welcome again to Dateline Abuja.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, we're looking at security in the FCT. Not too long ago, we had the Commissioner of Police here to talk about what the police is doing, challenges that they're facing, and what their plans are for the future. So now for the NSCDC, what has been happening since this year?
Well, a lot has been happening from our end, but as far as the security of lives and property is concerned in the FCT, it is not a one-man show. It's a collective, activity between the police, the civil defense, the Department of State Security, as well as the armed forces. So we have all been working assiduously to keep FCT safe. But for us, our mandates in the protection of critical national assets and infrastructure, we've been up and doing in ensuring that we keep the activities of vandals to the barest minimum. And so far, between January and now, we've made, I can call it substantial. About 40 suspected vandals have been arrested, in different parts of, the FCT for various offenses.
Last time we had a conversation with you, I think it was sometime last year, I think. We were worried about the Panteka market in the FCT and the fact that a lot of these vandals, the vandalism business was thriving because of illegal activities. In fact, at the time you had shut down the Panteka market. What's the update? Has it been opened up? Is there more regularization? What's going on with that matter?
Okay, yeah. The shutdown of Panteka market came, as a result of the approval sought by us, through the Honorable Minister of FCT. And the reason is because many of the goods, many of the vandalized items, of property of government, when they are vandalized, when they are stolen, they find their way to the Panteka market. And of course, during most of our investigation activities, we've had to recover, a chunk of it, running into hundreds of millions of naira. And that is why we took that step. But of course, between that time and now, after the shutdown, which, gave us room to profile them properly, they've been reopened, and we've been having a coordinated relationship because, of course, we gave them a new guidelines, and we made them to understand that on no account should any stolen item or stolen government property find its way to the market. Of course, anywhere that's, happens, we are definitely going to shut down the market. And of course, apart from a few individuals who are the bad heads, among them, and infiltrated the market, there are still a lot of,
honest businessmen.
Honest businessmen amongst them. And they've been each other's watchdog. So then, of course, as well, we've also stepped up our surveillance. I have my men, go into, the markets, undercover, just to, ensure that we don't have, we still don't have, those items. Sometimes they go in, sniff. Sometimes we go in there to demand, to buy, going undercover and make requests for certain items that we know that are likely to find its way. And so far, it has been okay. So I think the ban worked, that the regulation of the Panteka market is paying off. We are having issues with streetlights. The minister has tried so much to light up Abuja. If you go almost everywhere, you see the places that you once passed that everywhere was in total darkness. Everywhere is now lit up. But, we're having this constant battle, with this, should I say, vandals? And of course, one of the things and the challenges that I have seen, which of course is aiding vandalism of the streetlight poles, is this arbitrary knocking down of streetlight poles. Most of the time we see streetlight poles, by the wayside. Many a times when you see that, it is not even the vandals, but it is
The car accident.
the road users, drivers, reckless drivers, of course. And, when they knock it down, they run away. So this provides an opportunity for a vandal who, seeing a electric pole on the floor and knowing fully well that this, to an extent, that is their trade. To an extent, once I cut it into pieces, I know what to do with it to make quick money. So it has really been a problem, which of course I want to use this opportunity to appeal to residents of FCT, especially drivers. Being reckless, apart from knocking down infrastructure of government, you can also endanger your life. So Abuja drivers should please, realize that this is a collective, wealth. The infrastructure belongs to all of us. When they do that, it gives easy access to vandals, because once they see it, they feast on it. And that is why what I do when my men are on patrol, whenever we see, such poles, on the ground, we usually quickly alert, the appropriate authority, with the FCDA, to come pick it up. Because after some days, vandals, they have their own tactics. They've seen this thing, falling already. They give you time. 1 day, 2 days, third day, nothing is happening, nobody is moving it away. That's when you see them feasting on it. But most time, when they see our patrol vehicle, they run away. So, because of that, you may not necessarily been able to apprehend them, on the spot. But we can help ourselves, help the government by, being careful, as road users. So once we can, have that consciousness, I think it will really help those of us who are on the field doing the job.
Before we go on a break, let's talk about something the FCT minister had suggested back then. I remember we used to have this conversation a lot, where when you arrest vandals, the penalty 500 naira, 2,000 naira fine. Sometimes their brothers are waiting for them outside the gate of the mobile court so that they can just pay the money immediately, and then the guys go scot-free. So it felt like we were arresting people, putting all this effort into arresting people who are destroying critical national infrastructure. We're not just talking about manhole covers and what, we're talking rail tracks.
Yeah, definitely.
We're talking about the lives of people in the FCT, and then we felt like the punishment wasn't commensurate to the crime. And I know that the FCT minister at the time said we should change the crime they're committing from just vandalism to economic sabotage. That way it's weightier and the punishment is a little stronger. Where are we on that conversation?
Well, of course, the penalty that we usually get when we prosecute vandals, oftentimes has been discouraging, just because, you get here penalties such as, talking of 2,000, 5,000. Sometimes it's just community service, go and sweep, and all of that. But that is one thing where we, has discouraged, those of us in the law enforcement unit, because, you put in it so much. And of course, we have I've had experience of, a lot of recidivists. Those I've had to arrest like more than
Multiple
3-4 times, like you were here some time ago, this same person, and you take this person to court, he's back again in your net. So it hasn't really been helpful. But what we try to do, based on what the minister said, and also from our end, is that we we're stepping up, prosecution, and there are certain cases you can take, at the magistrate level, and there is one that can be entertained by, by the Federal High Court. So, in terms of, when you say vandalism, or you say economic sabotage, or you say stealing, it qualifies and it determines where you can actually take it to. So
I'm going to have you hold on to that thought.
Okay.
We're going to short break, and when we come back, we'll look at the distinctions and why it's important for this change to be made. So please stay with us on Dateline Abuja. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Dateline Abuja. If you've just joined us, the Commandant of the FCT Command of the NSCDC, Mr. Shola Odumosu, joins us tonight. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you once again.
All right, before we went on that break, we're talking about the distinction between vandalism and economic sabotage.
Yeah, the cases we are talking about, when we, talk about the magistrate court, it's a matter of jurisdiction anyway.
Oh, yeah.
There are some cases that the magistrate court have jurisdiction over, and there are some that, we have to take it to the Federal High Court. So most of the time, most often, the cases that goes to the magistrate court, comes out with such, convictions, as minimal as, community service, penalty, not as much as, not more than 5,000, sometimes as low as 1,000 and all of that. So when you classify it, in another, term, I don't want to say it looks larger or bigger than life or bigger than what it is all about. But so we're able to distinguish. Once it depends on the volume of arrest. If we are able to recover items that are, so much that, you can't afford to leave the suspect unprosecuted, we take it to, the Federal High Court. And that way, we are able to secure, convictions, sometimes in the region of 1 year, 1 year, 6 months, and 2 years above. So that's the distinction between, because when you go to the magistrate court, most of those cases of vandalism is classified as stealing. Recently, we had a situation, one of the trucks was coming into Abuja, unfortunately, had an accident, somewhere around Abuja. This vehicle was carrying normal goods, but when they turned over, underneath were railway sleepers, So that is how far people can go, And we're able to arrest them, alongside with the drivers, with the motorboy and all of that. But the problem we usually face is that those on ground that you end up arresting are not the real culprits. They are not the people behind. Sometimes it's just the motorboy. Sometimes it's just they're just providing haulage services. But of course, we have recovered so much, railway sleepers, and once we nab them, most of them when they're on the run, we have a strategic way of tracking them. And once we do that, we don't spare them,
Why the obsession with railway sleepers?
Is
it a lucrative thing?
It has a lot of economic, value. They take them out, to their melting companies. They melt them into different forms of different, items. So they make a lot of money from it. So that is why it is such a problem. But we have strategized in such a way that there is no portion, there is no entry point, into Abuja that you will come in to. Luckily, like that one I told you about, we were just, it happened shortly before where my anti-vandal boys, were stationed, Even if the accident had not happened, they would have caught them because whenever we stop any truck that is suspected of carrying any stolen item or vandalized item, we ensure that we we get to the bottom of it, because we've had various experiences where you could see bags of rice on top, but beneath are railway sleepers. We ensure that we engage, these people that we arrest, and from the useful information they give us, we are able to, at least we've had instances where we've arrested, for railway sleepers, we've arrested at least one of the sponsors of it, and the case is currently in court. We also have another ongoing case of, transformer vandalism. Oftentimes you will say erratic power supply, government is not doing enough. Government is doing, what they have to do. But you see, we have these nefarious individuals that will not just, let our infrastructure breathe. We've got lots of vandals, vandalizing electricity transformers. In fact, as a matter of fact, I have a case with me right now in my office where 3 suspected transformers, were stolen, and they were, making their way out of the city. We caught them, and of course, up until now, they've not been able to prove, the ownership of that, and we've succeeded in getting, the person behind it, and the matter is currently in court. These are some of the things. As at the time of arrest, the big man behind the scene wasn't there. It was just the motorboy, and the driver that we caught. But we have our way, it's a systematic thing. We have our way of, tracking and trailing you and making sure that you face the wrath of the law.
The prevention bit, especially when it comes to our railway sleepers, how is that going? Are you stationed at our railway lines to make sure that people don't come and steal our sleepers, and then we now have train accidents and things like that?
Yeah. The vandalism of railway sleepers, most often the ones that are vandalized are usually the abandoned railways.
So not the functional ones?
No, usually not the functional ones, are usually the abandoned railways. But of course, we have our men on patrol, and when you look at the system, as it were, most of this railway passes through the, forest corridors.
Forest, mountainous areas.
Some of these places are not accessible, some of them are only accessible by motorbikes and all of that. And that is why we usually advocate for community support, because no matter how we aspire to achieve, we cannot be everywhere at the same time, But when we have community partnering with us, it makes things easier. Most of those people that vandalizes these items, they live within, they live within the communities. So, and we know them. Some of us know who they are. But, we shield them oftentimes because some of them are our family members. But until such a time when they will vandalize a rail line that will affect each of their family members, that is when they will understand that there is need for every one of us to join hands together with security agencies. Like I said, even if we decide to put all civil defense officers across the railways within the country, it can still not cover the, the amount, and as it traverses the length and breadth of Nigeria. Within, the limited resources that we have been able to justify, our mandate. We've made a lot of arrests. Within my command now, I still have about 2 trailer loads of railway sleepers. A part of those we have accosted. Some of them that we have them in court, like I said earlier. So our effort is paying off. Our surveillance is paying off. But we can't do it alone. We can't do it all by ourselves. We need the people to join hands with us and give us information. We know, in fact, there are some communities where when they vandalize it, they have, where they store them. Like, they have the warehouse where they warehouse most of those things before they will move it out of that community. somebody hired that warehouse to them. So there are people who work for them. There are people who
In the
live around
community,
the warehouses. So what are we talking about? So we should join hands and stop blaming security agencies. We do a lot, you know. We don't sleep. Sometimes we are on the road at night doing patrol. For the patrol of FCT, we do night and day. I have those, as I'm talking to you, I have those who are probably handing over to another set that, you know, will continue at night.
Yeah.
So these are men who sacrifice their lives, you know, to ensure that everybody is safe and that our infrastructure are protected.
Well, that's all the time. I know that there's lots of collaborative work. I know that apart from your core mandate, I know that there's collaborative work they do with the police in all these operations, these demolitions and catching of criminals and sweeping all these dangerous areas. And we do know that there's a lot of work ahead for you and everyone else who's in charge of security in the FCT. But we do have to thank you so much, Mr. Shola Odumosu, for being with us on Dateline Abuja, and good luck with all the work you have ahead.
Thank you so much for having me once again.
For Abuja's residents, real confidence will come when they can travel, work, and return home without fear, when public infrastructure is protected, communities are secure, and rule of law is consistently enforced. Our thanks to the Commandant of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, FCT Command, Dr. Olushola Odumosu, and to you all for being a part of this conversation. Please let us know the happenings in your neighborhood using the social media handles showing right now on your screens. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kayla Magwa. See you next time.